The next speaker is also from DEP, Susan Hawkins from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Susan's a graduate with a degree in finance from the University of Connecticut. She spent 22 years working in the State Department of Transportation as an accountant and later financial supervisor in the Capital Projects Unit at the Engineering Funding and Planning Unit. In 2008, she moved from the Taj Mahal, as she calls it, as anyone worked in the DOT world, that's the Newington DOT building, to work in the Clean Water Fund at DEP in Hartford. The generous funding of the state related to Clean Water Fund has averaged $275 million, as George has said, and for the last 8 years, and she's been there as an accounting supervisor. Ongoing changes in the state and federal requirements for tracking and funding of the project keeps her work very challenging. So I'd like to introduce Susan, their presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Susan Hawkins. It's very nice to be here. Usually I'm in the office, and it's a real chance for me to get out and see everybody who lives and breathes the work that we fund. I supervise 6 accountants, and they are the ones that manage the financial aspects of these projects from your application through the payments all the way through the loan closing. Let's try this one. Okay. All right, so I'm going to cover the Clean Water Fund application today. Wasn't quite sure how the screen would present because some of the print is quite small on the application itself, so we're going to go through most of it in talking points. The first section of the application is pretty straightforward. You're going to put down your name, and you're going to give us all the contact information of who we're going to need to be working with during the application, and to get the ultimately to get to the agreement and get the agreement processed. So please list all of these: your authorized representative, your staff contact, your chief financial officer, of course your bond counsel, and your consulting engineer. Now, the supporting documentation that is necessary is the technical services agreement and the subsequent DEP approval letter. Now, normally with the application at that point, a draft technical service agreement, the engineering agreement, has been submitted, and that's fine. The engineer, the deep engineer, approves, does a draft approval on that, and we can get started with that. Then we also need the resolution to file the application and execute an agreement, and this is your authorizing resolution. There is an incumbency certificate that'll be prepared by your town clerk, and then the Clean Water Fund memorandum for the MBE and WBE is the minority business enterprise and the women-owned business enterprise. You sign the memo, and the memo itself explains the goals of the program, the percentages for the M's and W's that are the goals as they've been approved through an availability study we've done with EPA, and it explains the good faith efforts that are required. And we also need a completion schedule so that we can assign the correct completion date to your grant or your loan. Additional documents. Now for planning, your engineering agreement would include a plan of study, 5700 form, and a man-hour estimate by task. You need additional documents if you're submitting a design or a construction agreement, or application rather. We need your bonding resolution, which is for the total cost of the project. So even if you're submitting for design we need to see that you are going to be able to proceed to the construction within roughly that 3-year time frame that George mentioned. And so we need to see the total commitment that you'll be able to fund the whole cost of the whole project. We need a DEEP approval of the engineering report. That was usually done in planning. That will be a facility plan, or if you're doing II work, that'll be your SSES. We need intermunicipal agreements. Now, if you are building a new sewer and you're sending flows to another town, you would need to work out what the charges and the costs are going to be, and that would be contained in your intermunicipal agreement. And also, you would identify any other funding that you'll be receiving for the project. And this could be a grant, any type of a grant. We'll cover that more later. Okay. Also, just for construction projects, we need a final legal opinion. Essentially, this says that you own the property that you're going to do the improvement on. We need the DEEP plans and specifications approval letter. We need a copy of the approval letter for your user charge system. And also your authorization to award letter that DEEP has sent you. And if you are sending in your bid package at the same time as your application, then we will then be creating the authorization to award letter based on the bid package. So within your bid package, items we need to see are the following. The tabs of the, we're gonna add it all up, make sure that the numbers are right. We need to see the proposal of the bidder. We need the bid advertisement, a copy of that with the affidavit. We need your intent to award letter, and that's your letter to us indicating that you want to award this contract to the low bidder. The completed and signed Clean Water Fund DBE memo, and please note that very recently the 6100 form requirement has been suspended by EPA. We also need the DBE subcontractor verification form, and the DBE certifications, which would be the certifications from the DAS website, either DAS, DOT, SBA, or EPA. The Connecticut DAS contractor pre-qualification certificate is required. Any contractor that does over $500,000 worth of work has to be pre-qualified in the state. And also their DAS update bid statement, which shows the cumulative amount of work they are currently doing, and since they're bonded, they cannot exceed that amount. Section 3, pretty straightforward. Just tell us what type of work you're going to be doing in it, planning, design, construction, or it could be several of those, and a nice project description. Section 4 is the project cost summary. So this form, you're going to see it's, you've got all the costs listed. The types of activities that we're going to set budgets up for in your agreement are all on the left, which is your essentially your design, your construction, and then towards the bottom you've got your construction contingency, which is usually maxed at 5%. You're going to have to calculate or do an estimate of your interest during construction. That can add up to a fairly significant number. And let's see if we have any other items. You want to estimate your legal fees. Section 5 is the project funding summary. You're going to summarize your grant and loan totals. You're going to identify, again, any other funding sources you've got. And sometimes we co-fund with other federal agencies, USDA, also known as Rural Development. We've co-funded projects with them. If you get a grant from, say, Eversource, if you have other assistance, it could be a STEEP grant that you got from the state or any other type of grant funding. and then of course your local share. And section 6 is where we need the signature. So you're going to formally request that you're making application, and the authorized representative is going to sign. You provide a copy here of your authorizing resolution, your bonding resolution. The city clerk will provide the certificates certifying that the resolutions are true copies. And then we need the incumbency certificate that will tell us who is currently in office and what their term is. Okay, now that was part 1. The second part of the application are the documents that are required for the Office of the Treasurer, OTT. They want a copy of what you sent us. They also need the general municipal information. They're doing this is kind of a check on your creditworthiness. And they're also going to determine from all this information what type of agreement should they be writing. Is this going to be backed by the full faith and credit of your organization, or are you going to be pledging revenues? So this is kind of important for them to determine, again, the structure of the agreement that you're ultimately going to enter into. Now we have a few things to maximize your success. Your AE, your architectural and engineering contracts, must be procured through QBS, which is qualifications-based selection. That is a requirement. We have actually had to turn down 1 or 2 applicants who had gone ahead and not followed a QBS type procedure. The second item here is once you've fully executed that agreement with your consultant, please send the engineer at DEEP a copy, because they have to issue a final approval based on the fully executed copy. When you sent in the application, you probably based it on a draft, but they are required by our Attorney General's office now to write an approval based on the fully executed agreement, because they have to reference the execution dates in their documentation. Do not award your construction contract until DEEP has issued you your authorization to award. We try very hard to have a quick turnaround, so when we get those bid documents and we do the review, we try to issue that authorization to award very quickly. And this is the authorization to award is going to precede your notice to proceed to the contractor. Also, incomplete applications are not placeholders for funding. I think people have become more aware of this, but especially for the pooled funds, such as planning and II, we've got some other pools, green and pump stations, any of those, we really can't consider your application for funding until it's complete. Also, refer to the DEEP website for the latest memos so that you don't send in an old one and we would have to ask you to update it. And always, please, the best thing you can do is please ask questions of your DEEP engineer or your financial administrator. That is really key. We can keep things moving. It looks like a lot of documents at first, and the first time you do go through the process, it can be a little overwhelming. We certainly are willing to do hand-holding for new recipients. So, just to do the big picture, what everybody really wants is the money. And so, once the application is complete, at DEEP, the engineer and financial administrators sit down, we've got internal checklists, we go through them. We work with Office of the Treasurer to prepare your actual agreement. We send the agreement with a tax questionnaire out to the recipient, and to their bond counsel for review and then ultimately signature. You'll return it and we route it internally. We will route it through the deep financial unit. I'll look at it. It'll go up to the municipal unit, and ultimately it goes to our commissioner for signature. After our commissioner signs it, it actually has to go over to Office of the Treasurer, and then the Attorney General has to sign it. So there's a lot of signatures. That's probably a 1-week routing through us, and then it's about 3 weeks max turnaround over at the Attorney General. So you've got about a month from the time you've returned your signed agreement to us. It's about 4 to 5 weeks. Then a loan closing is scheduled by the Office of the Treasurer, and in our system, in our state's accounting system, we set up a project, a contract, and a purchase order. You send in your pay requests, the authorized representative signs the pay request letter, the invoices are sent in. We will reimburse you by the 13th business day of the month through, we're all electronic now, through an ACH automatic clearinghouse account. Now you have the money. So that's the important part. So thank you. He said save questions for later, so we will not do that. Oh, and it's been 5 years since we put the Clean Water Fund application online. Before that, it was always paper. It is online, it is fillable. There's also a Word version there. But it's been 5 years, and it's probably time to take a look at it, and maybe there's some things that could be simpler, easier. We can't remove all the requirements. Some of them are by statute. They're required by our regulations and the Attorney General's. However, if anybody is using it and they find that there is something that they would like different, that it could be easier to complete, any clarification, please contact me and let me know, and we will probably be working on hopefully a better version of it in the next 6 months, so I would love any feedback that anybody has from their experience with it. And I think that's it.